Part 101. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1004. Greed escaped from his senior brother and went back to his room to write and draw. He filled a piece of paper, then another piece of paper, and then decisively went out to hug his senior brother. "Brother, you must help me." Greed stretched out the two pieces of paper in front of his senior brother, with a matter-of-fact expression on his face. "I can't do these things alone. Senior brother, you are helping me and the council with this matter. My research is very important to the council." Archmage Baebo sighed. He had a look on his face like "You've come to defraud the funds again." There is no money to defraud in this wilderness. He took the paper and read it at a glance. The handwriting on the paper was flying and flying. It was obvious that Gretel was writing very quickly and was a little crooked. From time to time, a line will be painted out, or a line of words will be circled, and a line will be drawn directly to a certain line below. But excluding these messy visual effects, the overall document is still quite clear. On the first line of the first page, there is a big title, proving the mode of infection, followed by a full list of sub-items. Respiratory transmission, putting sick and healthy people in the same room but no other contact. Gastrointestinal transmission, exposing healthy people to the patient's excrement and then eating without washing their hands, but without other contact. Contact transmission, allowing healthy people to touch the skin of the sick person, the clothes used by the sick person, but no other contact. Hematogenous transmission, injection of sick person's blood into a healthy person, but no other contact. Insect-borne transmission, let healthy people and sick people live in connected rooms but separated by iron railings, and put mosquitoes, fleas, lice, etc. in them separately, but no other contact. "Didn't you already ask people to repel mosquitoes?" Archmage Baebo asked Greed with a black line on his face, shaking the piece of paper. "You're sure it's because of mosquitoes? Why do you still need to do so many experiments?" "What if I'm sure I'm wrong?" Gretel looked at him confidently. "I just think that there must be a way to spread the disease on a large scale. I can control a few others, such as prohibiting healthy people from approaching them to avoid respiratory and contact transmission, such as handling excrement, requiring hand washing in and out, and avoiding the digestive tract infect." He spoke plausibly and said several methods in one go. "It's just about repelling mosquitoes. I can't set up the magic circle by myself, so I asked my senior brother for help." "Actually, you are just lazy." Archmage Baebo wanted to hit him on the head. Seeing Gretel leaning back slightly and looking at him very warily, he put his hand down again. "Well, with so many patients, management, care, and recording all require manpower, did you ask me for someone to come? Or did you ask me to ask for someone from the other side? In addition to recording their illness, other things can be left to me. Let the Eagle Nation do it. But you have to send someone to build the house, otherwise it will not meet my requirements. For example, all rooms must be equipped with mosquito repellent arrays to eliminate the possibility of insect vectors." Okay, wait until I finish reading, and I will help you get it if you really need it." Archmage Baebo stopped with a headache, and then looked at the second piece of paper. Prevention and treatment. His eyes jumped suddenly and he stared at Greed. Gretel looked at him confidently. "Elder brother, you don't want the magicians and warriors of the council to go exploring in the jungle and survive one by one, dying of illness, right? You don't want a boat of adventurers to dock, go ashore for a walk, and then half of them fall ill, right? You don't want to either." "Stop." Archmage Baebo couldn't bear it and stopped. Seeing that Greed shut up obediently, he lowered his gaze and read line by line. "Under the prevention and control item, we should take it seriously and divide it into 3 items. Under the 3 items, each is divided into many sub-items. 1. Prevention. Find out the causes of illness and prevent them before they happen. For example, if it is transmitted through mosquitoes, you can make magic instruments to prevent mosquitoes from getting close, or you can find medicines, smoke them, or apply them on your body, or you can use mosquito nets in the campsite. 2. Treatment. Find symptomatic drugs, either local or from Nevis, or symptomatic and low-cost treatments, mainly referring to low spellcasting level and low cost, and treat them. 3. Vaccine. Outside this word was invented by Gretel. Gretel carefully crossed the box several times and circled it carefully. Archmage Baebo did not look down, looked up at Gretel, and sighed again. Next time when you submit a report, please don't make your preference so obvious, okay? There are 3 items, only the vaccine is heavily circled, so you can see clearly what you want to do at a glance. So you wrote the other 2 entries as a cover for this? There's no research yet, so why are you leaning towards vaccines? When reporting like this, it's easy to be criticized. This one is not approved and that one is not approved. Hee, isn't this just for senior brother to see? Greet replied with a smile. Besides, the vaccine is indeed the most effective. Brother, think about it, it's so expensive for everyone to carry a magic prop. Apply medicine on your body before going out every day. If you don't apply it even a little bit, you might get infected. It's better to go there before leaving Hong Kong, or even before departure. Everyone should get a shot of vaccine. So you are sure you can make a vaccine? Greet simply spread his hands. No, not sure, not guaranteed to be made. We need manpower and supplies. Brother, think about it, now it's just me and Cirera, oh, plus Lynn at most, that Valensimo might be able to help, and Bernard can only help carry it. When do you want to go? Then what do you mean? Archmage Baebo supported his chin, tilted his head, and looked at Gretel from head to feet, and then from feet to head. Do you want the airship to make another trip to pick up your team of necromancers from the oak forest? In terms of vaccine research and development, it seems that only Greet's team currently has experience. Under Greet's guidance, they have made vaccines for vaccinia and rabies, and currently seem to be developing a cholera vaccine. Greet shook his head desperately. Flying with an airship costs a lot of money. If possible, just use the current manpower to do the work, don't bother with it again. Or should I take you back now, stuff you back into your medical center, and come back after the vaccine is developed? No. Greet blurted out. I don't want to go back now. Don't die in society. If you want to come back, you have to hang around for a few more years to make everyone forget about the Lord of Plagues before coming back. Then what do you want? House, supplies, manpower. The most important thing is manpower. Senior brother, give me at least 10 people. 10 people who can write, record, and preferably cast spells. If you just want to record, I will do it, a sinister voice interface asked outside the window. Gretel turned his head, and Archmage Haynes had already walked in. With a wave of his hand, a golden light fell to the ground. Skeleton, 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 skeleton. They can also write and record, and can work independently without my control. How about it? Do you want it? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Please ask for this month's monthly pass and next month's guaranteed monthly pass. Next month is a new month. Whether this book can be in the top 10 of Fantasy Channel's monthly ticket list depends on you. 2,000 votes have been collected this month. There will be additional updates tomorrow and the day after tomorrow. Meow 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 meow. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1005. Gretel needed to do research. Strictly speaking, Gretel needed to establish something like an institute for the prevention and control of yellow fever or an institute for the prevention and control of tropical infectious diseases. Then, before the research work even started, he encountered the first difficulty. Site selection. This thing definitely can't be placed next to a big market. Not to mention that if something leaks out or something, it could explode anytime and anywhere if patients come in and out. Greet wants to set up a research institute, not to destroy the Eagle Country in a minute. Therefore, he chose another location based on the principle of selecting a P4 laboratory. Thanks to senior brother Toberbo, he can enter the airship and play as he pleases. At this moment, Gretel is lying next to the center console of the airship, staring at the map projected by the airship and trying to find. It doesn't work here, it doesn't work here, it doesn't work here, it doesn't work here. Little Greet, have you chosen a good place? Archmage Mansfield strode in and asked with a smile. Near Tenach, the capital of the Eagle Kingdom, the largest mage tower has been built. The mage tower at the port has also been built. Archmage Mansfield is here, the most important task has been completed, and there is nothing to do now. The next step is just to take a walk, or pick up some extra money. Little Gretel wants to build a research institute. No problem. Even if they don't charge extra money, considering that little Gretel has made such a huge fortune for them, releasing a few spells is nothing more than a simple matter. No, Greet shook his head with a grimace. Can't find it at all. Can't find it, Archmage Mansfield was surprised. He walked closer to the map, and looked down side by side with Gretel. You can't find something you're satisfied with on such a large plateau? What are your requirements? First of all, stay away from the crowd. It's easy. The red area on the map is the settlement. Other than that, it's up to you. Secondly, it's best to be downwind. Hiss. Archmage Mansfield scratched his head. When he was building the mage tower, he had investigated that the wind in the plateau basin, after crossing the surrounding mountain barriers, would continue to sink and sink until it reached the center of the basin. So, I want to find an area downwind. Boy, your requirements are a bit high, what else? Also, it needs to be a place far away from the water, preferably not connected to the residents' water points, but, in this poor place, you can't find a plot of land where the water doesn't flow to the center. Gretel is crazy. All springs, streams, and rivers in the Alpine Basin have only one destination, the volcanic lake in the center of the basin. The citizens of the Eagle Country drink the water there, use the water there, grow vegetables and water the flowers, wash clothes and bathe, it is all the water there. If the sewage from the institute leaks a little, or is discharged outside without being treated, or if the rainwater falls from the sky and washes the outer wall of the institute, and then flows directly into the lake, the whole country will be in a state of laughter and laughter. Got it? Don't worry, Archmage Mansfield shook his head. Gretel was just looking at the map. He flew all over the plane to choose the location for the mage tower. The Archmage made a few gestures, and the map slowly moved and became larger. There are none around the basin, but there are still some in the mountains. Take a look, does this sunken place meet your requirements? Greet, the place is quite good. It's big enough, flat enough, with shelter around it, and the sewage will not flow to other places, but isn't this a volcano crater? Your Excellency, Archmage, have you ever explored this place? This thing squirt? Whether the volcano will erupt or something, the magicians do have a way to explore. After all, some high-level magicians, and even legendary magicians, like to live in isolation and build their own magician towers on the crater of the volcano. It's easy to see the scenery from a high place, but difficult for others to climb up. The most important thing is that there is power surging under the mage tower anytime and anywhere, which can power the mage tower. It is convenient to create something, smelt something, or even destroy something. Early-stage exploration technology is immature, and it is not uncommon for things to turn upside down. With a bang, the entire mage tower went up to the sky. the magician's life savings, and possibly his disciples, were wiped out, and he was seriously injured or his magic power was reversed. If you come back in despair, you may still be in debt again. Over time, the Magic Council has formed a complete exploration mechanism. Archmage Mansfield would recommend this place to Gretel, and of course it has been explored. In fact, this is one of the alternative locations for the Mage Tower. Don't worry, it'll be no problem. Just see if the terrain meets your requirements. If so, will we choose this place? Then I'm going to trouble you. I'm going to draw drawings, buildings, etc. Leave it to me. Just pay. Well. Gretel really wanted to say, I have no money, or all the gold was taken away by Cyrilla, and I don't have a single gold coin now. Hey, I still have gold coins, which is just enough for pocket money. It's definitely not enough to settle a research institute. As for the contribution points, he spent them all as much as possible before coming to the New World. There may be rewards for what he did this time, but the settlement has not yet been settled. Little Greet, are you short of money? Outside the airship cabin, black robes were fluttering, and another Archmage walked in. The swollen and pale face of Archmage Hines had a rare smile. How about this research institute belongs to our Black Crow Swamp? You accept our research together and leave your research ideas, research plans and research records. In the future, this place will be taken over by Black Crow Swamp. He smiled like a wolf grandma. Gretel said, that face is worse than a straight face, and smiling like this always reminds him of a frozen corpse, or something like a giant watch. As long as you agree, we will cover all expenses in Black Crow Swamp. Will we give you an extra fee for guidance? Hey, can't we in Thunderhorn afford this money? Archmage Baebo protested. It's just an empty house in a research institute. It doesn't even need to be equipped with too many magic circles, and it doesn't cost a few bucks at all. Just give you a word and fool you. Little Gretel's hard work fell into the hands of Black Crow Swamp. Then you have the manpower in Thunderhorn to continue research, Archmage Hines retorted. We have it. There are a large number of people over at the Plague Branch, trying to get in? Are there any of you in Thunderhorn who are interested? Have you studied this topic? Occupying a research institute for nothing, what's the point of asking for the authorship of a few papers? Use. Archmage Baebo retreated. Greet thought for a while and handed over the research institute to Black Crow Swamp. This was not impossible. He thought to himself that he would not stay in the Eagle Country for long. He expected to leave once the yellow fever vaccine was developed. However, his time is limited, and the viruses of the tropics are endless. After yellow fever is solved, there will still be dengue fever. After dengue fever is solved, there will still be malaria. After malaria is solved, there will still be Ebola, hantavirus, hemorrhagic fever, and psittacosis. Wanting to conquer the jungle and allow people to travel safely in the jungle is enough for the mages of the Plague Branch to continue and cost countless people their lives. But the premise is, the purpose of those who come here from Black Crow Swamp must be to study treatments for diseases. Gretel looked at Archmage Hines warily. And researching vaccines. We can't study spreading the plague or studying how to kill people. Aren't you the Lord of Plague? Archmage Hines muttered softly. Then, under Gretel's murderous gaze, he raised a hand good-naturedly. Okay, I swear. All the mages in Black Crow Swamp who come here to study must have the intention of curing diseases and saving people, not just to study how to spread it. Is that okay? It can indeed be done. Greet went to draw pictures and plan with satisfaction. Laboratory body, experimenter's residence, animal breeding room, animal keeper's residence, volunteer residence, volunteer isolation room. You can't design like this. At some point, Archmage Mansfield poked his head over and pointed at his drawing. Gretel raised his head unconvinced. What's wrong? No one knows P4 Lab better than me. No, no one knows better than me how to design a virology research institute. I already own 2 in Nevis. At the Oak Forest Research Institute, several results have been published, and there has been no leakage. The residence you designed for them is too unstable. Archmage Hines also shook his head. The prisoners of war we took from the natives, even if they are low level, are soldiers and pirates. They are most likely professionals. Your cell cannot hold them at all. Ah. Gretel looked at each other with shock and confusion. It's a pity that he has always dealt with experimental animals before, such as rats, rabbits, dogs, and pigs. Will experimental animals escape? Of course it will, but wouldn't it be enough to have a cage or a fence? There must be iron railings, iron doors, and iron chains and shackles on the walls. Archmage Hines was still giving advice with rich experience. It is best to have a single room for each prisoner of war. If conditions are not enough, a corresponding magic circle should be set up to ensure that when you go in to pick up someone or observe the situation, you will not be besieged by a group of prisoners of war. In extreme cases, you must have control the setting for their total annihilation. Gretel. He belatedly remembered that the people he used for experiments were written as volunteers and read as prisoners of war. For a few gold coins, you can kill pirates from the Storm Islands or even farther away, all the way to the Eagle Kingdom. Most of them are a group of extremely vicious guys with blood on their hands. If one cannot control it, they can really rebel. Besides, let them live with the patients, let them live in the patient's vomit, put mosquitoes in their rooms with the patients, and draw blood from them. These actions look very malicious, so there is no need to expect them to believe that they are well-intentioned. On the contrary, we must first use absolute force to suppress their resistance. Gretel figured this out, couldn't help but smile a little ashamedly, and nodded to the 2 archmages. Then, he couldn't help but utter the sorrow that belongs to a doctor. Archmage, why are you so skilled? I really came from serious research. Using prisoners of war for experiments is just a matter of urgency. Besides, I also want to save their lives. In the future, animal experiments will be the main focus. When it comes time to use humans, volunteers will definitely be recruited in a regular way. Have you finalized the plan? Once confirmed, I will build it, Archmage Mansfield urged. Also, what is the name of your research institute? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Asking for a guaranteed monthly pass at the beginning of the month. It's not yet in the top 10 of the fantasy monthly ticket list. There are still 30 tickets left, and the cat is very panic. The beginning of the month is here, and being able to stay on the homepage of the fantasy channel is a very important exposure position. Everyone, please give me your guaranteed monthly pass. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1006. There were 2 archmages who had the final say. After the institute was built and Gretel saw the prisoners of war being tied up and let in, he no longer expressed any protest. He just stood at the door, turning on fortune observation technique and detection magic in turn, pointing and prodding. This one is sick, send him to that row of houses. This one is about to die. Send him to the 3rd row of houses. This is normal. Isn't this, the level too high? Knights and above will interfere with the results of the experiment. Take it over there. Hey. Don't hit. If you get hurt, it will affect the results of the experiment. No hitting. This seems to be a clergyman? Do you want to be locked up separately? Or disable his spellcasting ability? Being able to pray and heal can also interfere with the experimental results. Greet was busy and giving endless instructions. On the other side of the door, Lin En was holding a notebook and kept writing. At his feet, Mr. Trochka huddled up in a ball and had gained a lot of weight. Diego's hands were tied with a thick straw rope, and he walked step by step, to the entrance of the institute with difficulty. Standing still under the shouts of the indigenous warriors, a group of 10 people waited eagerly for the verdict of fate. Is he going to die? Will he die today? One-eyed Ober died. During that battle, he was killed by an indigenous warrior wielding an axe made of stone. Pablo, the gold-toothed man, died, being hit by a fireball falling from the sky, and was instantly destroyed. The idiot Tang Tuo also died. The guy who always screamed strangely, brandished a steel knife, and was the first to jump on other people's boats and kill them. He fled into the jungle in a panic and stepped on a snake. When you are pulled up, it won't work. On their boat, there were 50 or 60 people from the captain to the sailors. Even him, only a dozen people survived and were taken by the natives and stuffed into underground cells. Within a few days, their captain, bosun, and first mate were all dragged out. On their ship, they are full of calculations, and the 3 strongest ones. Captain and the others never came back. The carpenter on the ship, the only person on the ship who knew a few words of Aboriginal language, tentatively asked the guard guarding him. The answer I got was, they were sent to sacrifice to the gods. Sacrifice to the gods. It's like being eaten by a god, the guard grinned, and under the flickering torchlight, he could see a pair of black and yellow rotten teeth, which looked particularly scary. Just give it to the gods, drag it to the top of the pyramid, cut open the chest with a knife. He gestured on his chest and sneered very maliciously. Tear out the heart, cut off the head, smash the head, and lift the skull to expose the brain. The blood is mixed with corn tortillas to make rations for the gods. Don't worry, in a few days, it will be yours. Among the people in a cell, some fainted on the spot, some yelled like crazy, some hit the wall. I would rather die in the cell than die in the mouth of the evil god. If you are eaten by the evil god, you will not be able to ascend to heaven or return to the Lord of glory. However, Diego did not seek death. It wasn't that he thought someone would come to save him, nor was he expecting anything to turn around. But because he still has a younger brother. His poor brother, Donner, was 2 years younger and weaker. I have been following him since I was a child, herding sheep with him, collecting firewood with him, rushing into fights with other boys, and even being beaten to a bloody head without flinching. Later, they boarded a ship together, came to the New World together, and became pirates together. Together they followed the captain to the Eagle Country, and together they lost the battle and fled in embarrassment. The younger brother had a broken arm and was bleeding. He couldn't grab food from others, but he didn't die. His younger brother didn't die, and he couldn't die either. Like him, there were 17 or 8 others in the cell who did not seek death. After being imprisoned for one day, and one day after another, they were finally dragged out, 10 of them strung together in a string, stumbling and rushing out of the city. After 2 days of arduous trek, it turned into an even more arduous climb up the mountain. The day was not too hot, but the sun was scorching. After only 2 days in the sun, layers of skin broke out on Diego's face and body, and even blisters appeared in some places. Fortunately, the people who escorted them were quite merciful, or in other words, their purpose was to keep them alive. After walking a distance, stop and let them lie down by the stream to drink some water. After walking a distance, stop again and let each of them throw a tortilla. If you walk slowly, you will be scolded, kicked, and whipped, but you will not beat people to death. Diego supported his younger brother, gave him water to drink, handed him tortillas, and pulled him up when he was about to stumble. These days of imprisonment and high-intensity trekking made Donner's arms swell even more, and he started to have a fever and talk nonsense. Many times, Diego had to drag him hard, drag him away, and avoid touching his brother's broken arm. It'll be fine when we get there. I hope things will be better when we get there. Since I didn't kill them before, I won't kill them now either. After stumbling and stumbling, uphill and downhill, we finally reached our destination. Someone pointed and picked out some people from among them, while another warrior stood beside the team and raised his stone knife. Brush. 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 One knife at a time, he cut off the straw rope connecting 10 people. Some people were led to the left and some to the right. As for Tang Na, he was picked out by the man at the door and pointed to the side. Donner. Donner. Diego rushed forward, but was kicked over by the warrior next to him and stomped to the ground. Suddenly, the person who singled out Tang Na said hum and raised his fingers. A white light fell. Tang Na's moans stopped immediately, and his face, which was burning red, also calmed down a little. Diego breathed a sigh of relief, then felt horrified again. Pagan. Pagan spellcaster. Pagan devil. Before he could figure out how to react, Donner had been pulled up and pushed in front of the pagan spellcaster. The caster narrowed his eyes slightly, looked up and down, and then waved his finger. Then, Donner was pushed to Diego's side, and together with 5 or 6 people in the team, was pushed into a deep passage. You. Go in. You. Get in. They were stuffed into different rooms one by one, or 3, or 5. This time, the 2 brothers were roughly separated and crammed into 2 adjacent rooms. The moment before the iron door closed, Diego threw himself on the door and shook it with all his strength. Donald. Donald. How is it here? What are you going to do to my brother? I'm fine here. After a moment, the younger brother's voice, yelling with all his strength, came muffled through the thick wall. They put me in a separate room. There was a native next door, but he was separated from me by an iron railing and couldn't hit me. Diego breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he have the heart to turn his eyes and look around. There was also a native in this room. He was locked in a pile of straw in the corner. His face was red and he looked very lethargic. In front of the straw stood a water jug and a shallow pottery bowl. There is a wooden barrel in the corner. Maybe, it is used to collect excrement. There were no iron railings or any obstacles between the two of them. It was just a distance that they could walk by raising their legs. You. Give him water. Give him food. Take care of him. With a clang, a half-foot-high small window opened at the bottom of the iron door, and 2 clay pots without any patterns were pushed in. A can of water and a can of corn and pumpkin mash seemed to be barely enough for 2 people. There was another clang, the small window was closed and locked, and outside the door, someone shouted loudly. He dies. You die. He lives. You live. Put us together just so that I can take care of that native? In this case, why do we have to trek so long from the city to here? Wouldn't it be better to find a place on the edge of the city? Diego was completely confused. But with his own life and his brother's life at stake, he could only roll up his sleeves and work honestly. Feed the native with water and food, and wipe his forehead with straw dipped in water to prevent him from being burned alive. Different situations happened to different prisoners of war in a row of houses. Some prisoners of war were put into a room, separated from the sick natives by iron bars, and the breeze kept blowing from the natives to the prisoners of war. Some prisoners of war were kept with sick natives. Some prisoners of war were kept alone in a room that was airtight, but the clothes and excrement worn by the indigenous people were everywhere. Some prisoners of war were injected with the blood of sick natives, those who had just started to have fever, those whose fever had been relieved, those who had fever again and became seriously ill and even started to vomit blood, or those who gradually began to recover. Some prisoners of war were separated from the sick natives by iron bars. The breeze blew from the prisoner's side to the native side. Mosquitoes, fleas, bed bugs or lice were quietly put into the room. Each project can have as few as 5 groups and as many as 10 groups. Level 1-2 professionals, Level 3-4 professionals, knights and above, and rare spellcasters. There are people from the glorious Holy See and indigenous prisoners of war captured at the foot of the mountain. Gretel designed the experimental plan as completely as possible. Anyway, he has no shortage of prisoners of war, right? No wonder you can develop things like chickenpox and rabies vaccines. This is the first time Archmage Heinz has observed Gretel's research method up close. After reading it again, he admired. The experimental design is too comprehensive. I can't think of a better way. By the way, what are you going to do with these prisoners of war after they are used up? We must cure them, Greet replied without thinking. Using them for experiments is going too far. After they are infected, they must be cured. Well, after they are cured, it is impossible to hand them back anyway. After all the people have been cured, we can use them to sacrifice to the gods. Too strange. Okay, anyway, there are many other experiments to be done in the future. Archmage Heinz nodded obligingly. After thinking for a while he smiled and said, "By the way, have you decided what to name this institute?" Ah. Gretel really didn't think about it. Graduate school? Isn't this the only research institute in the entire Eagle country, or even the entire New World? What other name is needed? From now on, when we talk about Institute in the New World or Institute of Tropical Infectious Diseases, we should be referring to this one. If names are needed to distinguish them, that is a matter for latecomers. Have no idea? How about I give you a name? Archmage Heinz continued jokingly. Gretel looked at him warily. What name comes to mind? Black Crow Swamp Institute? Plague Research Institute? No, I will not agree to such a name. Look, your research institute has just been established and has already saved so many people. Archmage Heinz gave a suggestion lightly. Then, how about calling it Umbrella Research Institute? Gretel. Your Excellency Archmage, do you want to kill the entire Eagle Kingdom? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Asking for a guaranteed monthly pass at the beginning of the month. The beginning of the month is here, and I want to be in the top 10 of fantasy monthly tickets. The Fantasy Channel homepage is a very important exposure location. Everyone, please give me your guaranteed monthly pass. There will be 3 more consecutive updates starting tomorrow. Thank you for the 10,000 starting coins rewarded by the Strong Sea Monster. Umbrella leads with 15 monthly votes. Thanks to @bookfriend 201805281606076163 for the 100 starting coins reward. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1007. Should the new research institute be called Umbrella? Gretel is reluctant, Gretel struggles, and Gretel protests. Gretel, you can't roll around on the ground. After all, he is a level 10 mage, so he still needs a little face. However, this does not prevent him from trying to refute. I do not want. Why? This name sounds unlucky. It feels like it could explode at any time and kill the entire research institute and the entire Eagle country. Where did you get this feeling? Archmage Heinz was stunned. Gretel quickly shut up, turned around, and cleared his mind. He doesn't necessarily tell others that he actually traveled from another world. Is this joke about Umbrella Company from Resident Evil? Something big is going to happen. Especially in this world, high-level mages can only use detect thoughts. I just don't like this name anyway. He had no choice but to lie. Why not give it a name? It doesn't need an additional name. In the entire New World, at least in the central part of the New World, when it comes to the Institute of Tropical Infectious Diseases, I am the one. Okay. Archmage Heinz coaxed him. Well, in the short term anyway, there is really no need to rush to come up with a name. As for the future, it is passed down by word of mouth among the necromancers who take over. As long as the time is long enough and enough people pass it on, the nickname can also be turned into a name. Just like little Gretel, didn't the nickname Lord of the Plague just get passed down from generation to generation, and he himself accepted it and regarded himself as such? The Archmage took his disciples, one at level 18 and the other at level 15, to throw out skeletons that could work independently, and checked each room with Lin N. Have the conditions of all the patients who were imprisoned improved? Or has it gotten worse? Did you vomit blood? Is there any bleeding in the conjunctiva, gums, or other places? Do you have less urine or no urine at all? Pay attention to the conditions of prisoners of war who are locked up with native patients or looking at each other through railings. Do you have a fever? Have a headache? Any chills? What's your temperature? If someone is sick, pull them out and identify them carefully. What kind of disease is it? If a common cold, fever, inflammation caused by a wound somewhere, or anuria caused by insufficient drinking water supply were confused with this infectious disease, Gretel would not laugh at them, but would actually hit them. The necromancer was working hard on research, but the Archmage Baebo turned to the Eagle Country. Strictly speaking, it was the Eagle Kingdom that found the magicians, and then asked them to report to the higher level, all the way to Archmage Baebo. What? They want a promise that these prisoners of war will be returned to them after they are used up? Why don't we? If you don't hand it over. The person who came to deliver the message was Isabel Ladd, a level 15 magician of the plasticity department and a sonic director. She belongs to another faction and is not a disciple of the Lord of Thunder. Therefore, Archmage Baebo was more polite to her, and she remained respectful in front of the Archmage. If they don't hand it over, they hope to exchange these prisoners of war for gold or other items of equal value. They said, these prisoners of war are to be used to worship the gods after all, and it is rare to capture so many foreign prisoners of war. This pair spirits are very important. Archmage Baebo frowned subconsciously. Then he stood up. I understand. Let me handle this matter, just talk to their gods. He raised his hand slightly, and a bolt of lightning immediately fell on the entrance of the research institute. Archmage Belbo's figure appeared in the electric light. He looked around and found Gretel accurately. Little Greet, are you interested in going with me to talk to their gods? Greet had a stack of paperwork on his left and a stack of records on his right, and he was sweating profusely from work. Just as he was about to answer I really don't have time, Lin N, who was also busy opposite, kicked him gently. Go, I'm here. It's always good to see more things. Archmage Baebo nodded slightly to the necromancer. Immediately, he pulled Gretel up and drew his left hand in the void in front of him. An oval mirror made of lightning quietly appeared. He pulled it casually, and the oval mirror separated on both sides, revealing a portal. Walk. Taking one step forward and standing still again, the two of them were already on the first step in front of the pyramid. Archmage Baebo raised his head, looked above the pyramid, and also looked at Trotoani who was rushing over. I need to talk to you about the living sacrifice. They were immediately invited into the interior of the temple, the most spacious hall, and sat down under the statue of Trotoani as guest and host. Gretel sat under his senior brother, holding a cup of cactus fruit juice and a drink mixed with mint water. He looked left and right at the obsidian statues of gods and bowed their head slightly. The brilliance of the sunstones inlaid in his eyes flowed, as if the gods were staring at them. In fact, it's probably not as if but actually. Greet felt it attentively, and indeed felt a different wave of power from the statue. Next to me, senior brother got straight to the point. I came here specifically to ask for advice. I would like to ask, what is the reason why the eagle god and the snake god need to use living people to perform blood sacrifices? Because the gods need power, Trotoani replied matter-of-factly. If we don't perform blood sacrifices, where will the power come from? Just like this time, the great eagle god, the strong man who ate the white ghost, has increased a lot. If we can't worship it regularly, where will the gods get the power to protect us? Where will the strength come from to lead us in battle? Archmage Baebo nodded slightly. He watched the whole blood sacrifice process, and the airship kept scanning, bullying the indigenous gods for being insensitive to the magician's power. The conclusion is that the power of the eagle god has indeed increased. But this rise is not stable. Just like a person, a full stomach will always have strength. But whether it can be converted into muscles and whether it can strengthen bones is another matter. Gretel couldn't help it anymore. The gods he has seen absorb power in different ways, and Elder Tapros also mentioned in the lesson he had given him that blood sacrifice is a very low-level method, and the efficiency of using energy is very, very low. Can't we use other methods to absorb power? He glanced at his senior brother, and after receiving his nod of approval, he asked his question. For example, absorbing the people's faith power? The people's worship and offerings should be able to provide enough power to God, right? Of course that's possible. Trotoani nodded calmly. The people of the Eagle Country are all devout subjects of the Eagle God and the Snake God. However, dear son of God, you must also know that under different circumstances, the faith and worship that the people can contribute vary. Not much. Greet naturally knew this. In other words, this is why rituals are performed, under the influence of a specific environment, music, singing, even church architecture, light and shadow, etc. It is easier for people's hearts to converge and it is easier for them to have the power of faith. How is the ceremony going for the two gods of the Eagle Kingdom? Moreover, every time a living sacrifice is held, the people worship it? When the excitement reaches its peak. Okay. Greet originally had rituals in his mind, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that he wanted to provide to the two gods. Of course, we still need to seek the opinion of our senior fellow apprentices as to whether we can provide it. What if these two gods obtain advanced development methods and then evolve to level 19 or even legend? Will it break the balance of the situation? Is it possible that some of the power of the parliament will be involved? However, after hearing what this Trotoani said, the relevant rituals were packed away silently. Prick up your ears and listen to the second question raised by Archmage Baebo. There are not many beliefs that a single person can contribute, so wouldn't it be enough to increase the population? For example, if there are 3 million people in the basin now, and the number has increased to 6 million, wouldn't the power of the two gods be able to overturn it? What's the point? Why do we need to engage in blood sacrifices? But the basin can't support so many people. Trotoani blurted out. As the spokesperson, leader, and wise man of the Eagle Country, he is very familiar with the population capacity of this basin. He turned his gaze and looked at the square outside the temple, and even looked at the sparkling lake in the distance. Even though this basin is so big, the soil on the mountainside is barren, water is scarce in the dry season, and floods wash it out in the rainy season. There is only a little bit of land by the lake and floating fields in the lake that can grow food. Whether the floating fields can be grown depends entirely on will the rainy season be half a month late that year. Then bring the residents under the mountain under the rule, Gretel blurted out. There are so many people at the foot of the mountain. If we let them rebel for a while, why not rule them and let them worship the gods together? Isn't the belief at the foot of the mountain also a belief? Gods absorb faith, and there are no geographical boundaries. Of course, like the kingdom of God of the Lord of Glory, you may need to consider the issue of long-distance faith mobilization, but as far as the Eagle Kingdom is concerned, there is no need to worry about this. Archmage Baebo turned his head and glanced at his junior brother, smiling slightly. Trotoani already shook his head. Going to the foot of the mountain, whether it is conquest or plunder, will consume the power of the two gods. Without the power of the eagle god, there is no way to attack, and even the white eagle warriors cannot fly high. Without the blessing of the snake god, the warriors, when I come back, I will bring the great plague back to the mountain. So, is it a matter of attack power and defense power? The two senior brothers looked at each other again. Archmage Baebo has already taken over. If it's a matter of attack power, the Parliament can join forces with the Eagle Country to conquer the surrounding areas and share the results. If it's a matter of worrying about the plague. He looked at Gretel. Gretel raised his head and answered loudly. I'm already doing research. Within a month, preliminary results will be available. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Is there anyone who hasn't voted for the guaranteed monthly ticket? Knock on the bowl. Thanks to and @LittleFot55 for tipping 1,500 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1008. There was a moment of silence in the temple. Trotto Annie looked at Greet carefully, from head to feet, and then from feet to head. Greet raised her face and looked at him without flinching, muttering silently in her heart. The vaccine is not that fast, but the verification method of transmission is very fast. Several possibilities are verified at the same time, and it is estimated that it will be out in 10 days and a half. Greet will never forget the example of yellow fever given by the teacher when he was studying epidemiology in his previous life. In 1802, Stubbings Firth, a doctoral student at the University of Pennsylvania, applied the vomit of yellow fever patients to his wounds, dripped it into his eyes, inhaled the gas evaporated from the vomit, and swallowed the dried and compressed product of the vomit. Swallow the diluted vomit directly. There was an uproar of you in the classroom. The teacher continued to speak without changing his expression. He was safe every time. Later, he followed the same method and inhaled the patient's blood, saliva, sweat, and urine into his body, and was still safe. From this, he was convinced that yellow fever cannot be transmitted between people. Spread. The classroom was buzzing with chatter, and the students all shook their heads. They admired the perseverance of this senior, but also sympathized with him for suffering so much in vain. The teacher continued. In 1900, in order to prove that yellow fever is transmitted through mosquitoes, American military Dr. Raziel allowed himself to be bitten by mosquitoes that had bitten yellow fever patients. He became infected and successfully proved this. The voice in the class became louder again, and the students whispered among themselves, with many saying things like "then you will be successful and famous." Immediately afterwards, the teacher's voice poured cold water on their heads. He died. There was a moment of silence in the classroom. All the students lost their smiles and lowered their heads to pay tribute to the brave traveler. For yellow fever, in the year when Greet traveled through time, there were no special symptomatic treatments. They could only provide supportive treatment to prevent complications and treat headaches and pains. In 1900, if you were infected, you basically had to risk your life. Of course, that's not the case now. Disease removal plus treatment, a two-pronged approach, you can always bring your life back. Therefore, Gretel was eager to obey the authority and agreed to use prisoners of war for experiments. Anyway, the first one is that you can't die, the healing spell can do it. The second one is that it can't spread. All the magicians carry magic tools to repel mosquitoes and flies. In addition, every room has a targeted mosquito repellent magic array. Just when I thought of this, a black mist suddenly filled up around the statue of the snake god. The black mist rotates, condenses, and fixes, coating the pure black scales of the snake god statue with a layer of gleaming brilliance. Then, the god's eyes lit up, the snake's kiss opened, and hissed a message. A vague yet extremely clear wave passed through the hall and passed directly into Gretel's heart. Lord of Plague, are you trying to take advantage of my divine power? Where to start? Greet was stunned for a moment, his mind racing, checking out the various things he had done recently. After thinking for a while, he shook his head firmly. What do I need your divine power for? Only my divine power can protect the soldiers from the plague. The snake god became excited instantly, the black mist billowed, and hissed. If you want to eliminate the plague, what else can you do besides using my power? Tell you, it's impossible. Gretel. Should I say that fortunately I am a priest of the god of nature, my healing skills may come from nature, or they may come from something else. Anyway, it has nothing to do with you. Otherwise, I would still be stuck as a first-level priest if I expected you to be such a picky and swishy god. Forget it, you can't ask too much of the indigenous gods. At least it's not an automatic answering machine that condenses faith, but a living thing that falls on the ground and can speak by itself. If the negotiation doesn't go well, you can still ask the senior brother to take action and catch it and give it a good beating. For this reason, don't be too picky. Gretel silently comforted himself and tried to smile at the snake god. My defense against the plague shouldn't require your divine power, at least, the defense ideas are different. But to be on the safe side, can you please tell me how you protect your warriors and protect them from the plague? Wherever my divine power reaches, all disasters will of course retreat. The snake god answered without hesitation. Gretel pouted. Come on, everything depends on divine power, and we can't talk about it now. Even if it is divine power, it has a way of functioning, right? The snake god seemed to be enraged, hissing, and writhing. Suddenly, Archmage Baebo coughed slightly. If you say that, we can't talk. Otherwise, you call a warrior in, preferably a low-level one, cover him with divine power, and let us see how it works. This passage was spoken calmly, softly, and slowly, with a slight smile on his face as he spoke. The black mist suddenly stopped churning, shrank back slightly, paused for a while, and then quickly swept through the hall. Cough. As if receiving some order, Trotoani coughed lightly, stood up, and raised his hand. Soon, one of the Black Eagle warriors standing guard on the steps outside the door walked in quickly. He first saluted the statue, then saluted Trotoani and the two guests respectively. Then, put down your weapon and stand carefully in front of Gretel. A wisp of black mist immediately covered it. It's very light, and can barely be seen if you don't pay attention. Gretel's eyes suddenly widened, staring closely at the warrior, and quickly switched to detection magic. The energy intensity is not very high, so touch the second ring, the stronger one in the second ring, the infrared vision, senior brother, his body temperature has dropped. I saw it, Archmage Baebo replied calmly. Gretel muttered softly. Snake god. Snakes are temperature-changing animals. Their body temperature is always relatively cool. It is possible to make him look cooler. Wind, there is no wind around him. Smell. He muttered, jumped up and down, studied for a long time, and walked around the Black Hawk warrior 3 or 5 times. It was only when the black mist shrank and swollen, and became a little impatient, that he confidently came to a conclusion. The snake god's blessing is to simulate the person being blessed into a snake in terms of body temperature, smell, fluctuations, etc. It allows the poisonous insects, mosquitoes, and flies in the jungle to ignore his existence and not bite him, right? The black mist fell silent and clung to the statue, making no sound. Gretel raised his head and looked directly at the statue of the snake god, spreading his hands towards it. So I said, my thinking is definitely different. My idea is to use magic to drive away poisonous insects, mosquitoes, and flies. If we can determine which kind of thing is spreading, we can reduce the cost even lower, close to zero-ring magic. Situation. He glanced at Archmage Belbo inquiringly, and his senior brother nodded to him, meaning no problem, it can be done. Gretel cheered up and continued. The second idea is to find anti-worm medicine in the jungle, make a potion and apply it on the body. Of course, this requires full communication with the indigenous people in the jungle, or with the help of the power of the nature priest. Archmage Baebo. What kind of tone is this? Why does it sound like we're going to bring in nature priests from the mainland? Little Gretel, have you forgotten that you are a level 10 nature priest? Even if you are lazy and don't want to go into the jungle, if someone dug up those trees and grass, you should know which ones can repel mosquitoes by asking them. Forget it, teach me a lesson, or beat your junior brother, don't do it in front of outsiders. Master Baebo looked at his nose with his eyes, his nose at his mouth, and his mouth at his heart. He listened to Gretel's statement. There is another method, and this is what I am investing the most energy in now, it is to make people resistant to this disease. Just like I used to make them resistant to smallpox, bite it and bite it. After you bite it, you will not get sick. The black mist billows again. It first stretched out a whip-like mist and whipped it at the Black Eagle warrior. When the Black Eagle warrior left quickly, the black mist simply broke away from the statue, coiled up in the air for a while, stood upright for a while, and expanded extremely at the end, making a loud hissing sound. That's not to divide my power. It's not to steal my magical power. Once you get the magic medicine for smallpox, many people won't believe in me. My power, my power. If they all expect me, fear me, beg me, how could I, how could I? Gretel lowered his eyes silently. How sad, he thought, that the power of the gods is like this. No matter how powerful the god is, no matter how arrogant the god is, when no one in this land believes in him, no one worships him, no one fears him, no one even calls his name anymore. The so-called gods can only return to dust like mortals, and dust to dust. In fact, because he is more powerful than mortals, he needs to endure fear and pain for a longer period of time before dying. All right. He was wandering in the sky, sighing silently, when Archmage Baebo interrupted impatiently. The Archmage stared at the billowing black mist in the center of the temple, with a slight scorching heat in his eyes. Isn't it just some divine power? Isn't it just the fear and worship of the people? In this way, when little Gretel makes something, I will teach you how to make it, or give it to you directly, and you will distribute it in the name of God's blessing. Is this okay? Greet doesn't want the power of faith. To him, every power of faith and every chant of Lord of the Plague are poisonous and an obstacle to his advancement. If you can get rid of it and have an unlucky guy take over, that would be the best. That's great. The black mist condensed, subconsciously coiled into a snake formation, and lowered its head. Archmage Baebo leaned back comfortably. Of course, these things are not given for free. Hey, I said snake god, what are you willing to give in exchange? Then we have to wait until he makes it first. The black mist suddenly stood upright. Archmage Baebo nodded calmly. Of course, we have to wait until he makes it. What will happen after it is made? What are you going to exchange for something that can protect one person, 100 people, or 1,000 people from being harmed by the plague? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Knock on the bowl and ask for a monthly vote, ask for a guaranteed monthly vote. Is there anyone who hasn't voted for a guaranteed monthly vote? I also want new monthly votes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1009. Archmage Baebo and the Snake God were at loggerheads and discussed for half an hour before reaching a preliminary agreement. 1. The Eagle Country provides all safety and convenience for Greet's research, including but not limited to supplying food to researchers and prisoners of war, supplying various medicines and materials, sending people to guard prisoners of war, etc. 2. In return, after Gretel achieved results in his research, he agreed to sell the medicine to the Eagle Country and tacitly allowed the Eagle Country to distribute it in the name of God. As for the price, it is tentatively determined to be a gold nugget the size of Gretel's fist for every 1,000 potions. 3. In view of this, the Eagle Country agrees that after the potion is completed and the supply begins, outsiders will no longer be the objects of human sacrifice. 4. If any conflict arises between outsiders in the country, it shall be handled by the Parliament itself. If any conflict arises between outsiders and the citizens of the Eagle Country, the conflict shall be resolved by the magicians stationed by the Parliament and the rulers of the Eagle Country. The agreement was reached, and the two parties specially made 2 gold plates, in duplicate, engraved with all the contents of the agreement, the Eagle God and the Snake God, the 2 18th level mages of the council, as well as Trotoani, the Golden Eagle leader, and Chi Wakato, each left his own mark. A gold plate was hidden in the temple, and a gold plate was brought back by the magicians and hidden in the secret vault of the Tower of Babel in Nevis. Originally there was a magician who suggested, "Would you like to copy a few pieces and place one each at the entrance of the temple, the entrance to the market, the Mage Tower and the Research Institute?" As soon as he left the mouth, he was pulled by others. For this kind of blatant selling of divine power, make a copy of it privately and put it in the warehouse of the Eagle Kingdom Mage Tower. Everyone can see it in private, but don't publicize it publicly. If it is made public, the people of the Eagle Country will know that, oh, this is not a power given by God, it is researched by magicians, and it will not work. If it doesn't work, it won't sell at a high price. Besides, how could the Snake God and the Eagle God put this agreement at the door of the temple and the big market? Isn't it shameful enough to ask someone else to buy something that you can't make yourself and treat it as your own gift? After the agreement was concluded, the last important task of this parliamentary expedition was also announced to be completed. The next day, the sun was bright and the wind was strong. The solar sails on the airship were bulging. The magicians carried their belongings and called their puppets, and filed forward. Archmage Baebo pulled Grey under the airship and whispered, "I can't stay here forever. You are far away in the Eagle Country. You have to know how to protect yourself, try not to leave the Institute. You must leave the Institute, either with Cyrilla or with that guy Heinz. Together. Here at the Research Institute, you're done with the work. You're now level 10, and you're on the threshold of becoming a high-level mage. You should walk around as much as possible to broaden your horizons. The broader your knowledge, the more stable you will be when you take the step of materializing the meditation world. At least 1/3 of the mages who are stuck at this step are those who only knew how to wait when they were young. In the laboratory, I don't want to walk around. Put those combat materials away and take a look at them when you have time. Even if you don't have as strong a fighting ability as the senior mage, you should at least know how to protect yourself." When he said something, Greed nodded. When he said something, Greed nodded. At the end of the sentence, Archmage Heinz next to him became impatient. "Hey, have you said enough? The whole team is waiting for you alone. Don't worry, I'm still here to watch, and I won't lose little Gretel." Archmage Baebo, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. It's just that you're here that I don't worry about. What should we do if a good evocation mage falls into your hands and is misguided or misguided? He hasn't even learned this under the immortals or the high-level necromancers. He has accepted the title of Lord of Plagues even though you are yelling at him. It would be terrible if someone who has been with you day and night in the Research Institute and worked together for a year and a half turned completely towards the necromancy system. How can the necromancy system be as strong as the plasticity system? Can you get into legend by playing with plagues and bacteria? However, no matter how reluctant he is, Gretel will eventually have to walk his own path. Archmage Baebo pressed his junior brother's shoulder hard and turned around to board the airship. The sails were fierce, all opened, and the airship rose from the ground. Those people are finally gone in the temple. Chiwakoto leaned on a bare golden rod, looked up at the sky, and breathed a sigh of relief. The conscience of heaven and earth, if he doesn't leave, he will suffocate to death. Those guys who look a lot like the white ghosts but call themselves magicians don't burn, kill, loot, and do dirty things like the white ghosts, but their actions are quite dark. After staying here for a month or two, the walls of the temple were completely stripped bare, and all the gold, silver, gems, and precious feathers were wiped away. The most annoying thing is that it was her female snakes who agreed to the reward, and they and their attendants personally collected these valuables and sent them up respectfully. Finally, gone. Trotoani touched the golden ring on his robe and watched the airship until the huge thing turned into a small dot and was no longer seen. Then he took a long breath. I'm still worried that they won't leave. If they don't leave, they won't be able to leave. If we don't leave, the rainy season in Tenok will be here. This place is sunny half the year and rains half the year, with scorching sun on sunny days and heavy rains in the rainy season. Without the sun, in the strong wind and rain, that thing called an airship might not be able to fly. If those guys were allowed to stay for another half a year, Trotoani's position would be unsafe. Even the eagle god and the snake god don't dare to mess with them. It was quiet in the temple, and neither the eagle god nor the snake god showed any signs of miracles. What the magicians plundered was nothing more than some human wealth, and what was given to them was real benefits. At the very least, it would be impossible for the eagle god to take down the guy in a white robe with gold trim without any injuries if he relied on his own strength. At that time, a large part of the blood sacrifice that is eaten in the mouth will be used to repair the injury, and it cannot be used entirely to increase strength. Belch. Those outsider smells are so beautiful. When will another batch of white ghosts come? Although it was agreed not to use outsiders as subjects of human sacrifice, that meant adventurers who came to the Eagle Country. Those white ghosts who mobilized their armies and fought mightily should, maybe, have a good discussion with the magicians, or should they eat it? The eagle god put his head under his wings, and the snake god curled up into a ball and closed his eyes quietly. In La Habana, the capital of the Storm Islands, Governor Francisco Balmond was worried and uneasy. The fleet set out for the Eagle Kingdom has been setting off for 2 or 3 months. In 2 or 3 months, not even a single message came back, let alone the triumphant return. What happened to them? Did the fight go well? Is it because the Eagle Country has too much money, that city in the lake is too rich, and everyone is getting rich, so they robbed it and forgot to take it back? Or are they not strong enough and are they confronting the indigenous country and trying to advance in a roundabout way? Or maybe the disease demons are doing so well there that the entire Eagle Kingdom has been completely wiped out, and even half of the soldiers they brought there have been infected? After all, although the cowpox issued by the Holy See claims to be able to resist smallpox, the effect is always not quite right. He put his hands behind his back and walked back and forth in the room, making the wooden floor of the study creak. Although most of the troops sent out were Deputy Governor Alfonso's personal force, he also lent some of his elite troops. What's more important is that even Archbishop Teramo, who is in charge of the diocese, brought a group of clergy there. Not to mention the rainy season is coming soon. Before the rainy season, as usual, a small fleet would sail to the Brolin Kingdom carrying the gold and silver collected from the Storm Islands. The goods transported by this fleet need to be jointly signed by the governor and the archbishop before being sealed. Otherwise, how can you explain it clearly? Which ones are the official property of the Storm Islands, which ones are private luggage, which ones need to be divided between the kingdom and the glorious Holy See, and which ones fall into private pockets? What about the archbishop? The archbishop is still in the kingdom of eagles, who represents his authority. Does the kingdom recognize the person who represents him and his mark? His position as governor can only be maintained by continuously paying tribute to the kingdom, the glorious Holy See, the Queen Mother, the King's Mistress, the King's favorites and domestic ministers every year. Otherwise, how could he, a court earl and the son of the previous King's Mistress, secure this position? Archbishop Teramo, even if you don't come back on time, at least send a message back. How about I send a ship to take a look there? Governor Balman touched the black and curling mustache on his upper lip and pondered. Send a speedboat over and have a look. When people go to the plateau, the boats may not all run away. There are always people watching the boats at the port. Let them show you the way. Go up and talk to the Archbishop, and give you a reply at least. Just as I was thinking of this, there was a loud thumping sound on the corridor outside. Immediately afterwards, Governor Balman's most trusted lieutenant knocked hard on the mahogany door of the study. Your Excellency the Governor. Your Excellency the Governor. Come out and take a look. There is an emergency. Governor Balman opened the door unhappily and came out. After walking through the corridor and coming to the living room, I saw a man wearing a three-cornered hat and smelling of low-quality tobacco, standing there a little awkwardly. When he saw the governor coming out, he grabbed his three-cornered hat and bowed respectfully. This is Captain Juan, the adjutant explained beside him. Captain Juan visited the port where the Eagle Country Expeditionary Force docked half a month ago. He has important information that needs to be reported to the governor. What's up? Dear Governor, I can't believe my eyes. The captain named Juan straightened up, his light blue eyes full of fear. He opened his arms, then closed them again, drawing a big circle. You know, go to the port in the Eagle Country. Although it is a small port, it has a lot of good things. We often stop there. Yes, there are mahogany, leather, and rare birds. Very famous, very famous. Get to the point, Governor Balman scolded impatiently. Captain Juan nodded and bowed. Yes, yes, the point. 2 months ago, I saw the fleet of the governor's palace there, our own fleet, and I also did a small business with them, but this time I went there there's not a single boat there. Not even one. Returned. Governor Balman's eyes lit up. He immediately knew it was impossible. Captain Juan had already returned. If Deputy Governor Alfonso's fleet returned, it would be impossible for none of them to return to port until now. Even if you encounter a storm on the way, at least, there should be a few coming back. Moreover, a tower was built in that port. A very, very high tower. Captain Juan waved his hands and gestured repeatedly. The top of the tower emits a very strong light, a bright white light that can be seen dozens of miles away at night. The body of the tower is engraved with an evil six-pointed star pattern. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 10,000 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1010. 2 hours later, Governor Balman's subordinates, staff, generals, naval commanders, and leaders of La Habana Cathedral gathered together, and the conference room was full. That's the way it is. Governor Balman's aide-de-camp, Antonio Herrera, hung up a map and relayed the news Captain Juan had brought in a flat voice. Everyone in the conference room looked like water. An 18th level archbishop, 2 16th level heavenly knights, a group of 13th and 14th level high-level warriors and several bishops. Hundreds of elite corps warriors and a large group of pirates. Such a team went on an expedition to the Eagle Country. There was no news for 2 or 3 months. Even the ships on the beach were gone. A mage tower was even erected on the shore of the harbor. It is not clear what the current situation of the expeditionary force led by Deputy Governor Alfonso and Archbishop Teramo is. What's even worse is that the destruction of such a force in the Eagle Kingdom will instantly shake the kingdom's rule over the Storm Islands. Even in the best case scenario, it will cause the forces in the governor's mansion to shift from strategic offense to strategic defense. And contraction. The only good thing may be that a large number of pirates died this time in the silence. General Alonso Barva, the naval commander of the Governorate of the Storm Islands, stroked his short, steel needle beard. To pronounce. In the short term, we won't have to worry about pirates, ha 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 ha. He got a blank stare. Pirates, what are pirates? To put it bluntly, if you have guards around you and healers in the city, who is afraid of pirates? Didn't the pirates have to sneak ashore and sell the stolen goods carefully? Or didn't they have to disguise themselves and go to the church to buy holy water? Didn't they earn those furs, spices, pearls, gems, and big heads? However, with an important fighting force in the viceroyalty gone, pirates will soon become rampant. They rarely invade cities, but they will rob plantations, workshops, and small businessmen. It's very annoying. It's best not to have pirates, Governor Balmond replied calmly. At least those who go to the Eagle Country and their families should not be harassed by pirates. Otherwise, it will really become a big joke. Everyone nodded silently. The governor's words are equivalent to drawing a line for everyone. It is best not to touch their family members. If the higher-ups are held accountable, someone will take the blame. Property. The property needs to be made more beautiful. The military has lost so much, and occasionally there are places that cannot be protected. Isn't it normal? As for the issue of accountability from above, we should report it immediately. The person in charge appointed by the golden-robed Archbishop of Teramo before departure, Archbishop Kovo, answered categorically. He is appointed by the glorious Holy See and is responsible to the glorious Holy See. His relationship with the Governor-General is cooperation rather than being led by it. Why would he not report such a big thing and wait for the Vatican to doubt his loyalty? Waiting to be transferred back to the Holy See for accountability, why can't you stop Archbishop Teramo? Worst possibility, waiting to be excommunicated? The report must be reported. Governor Balmond nodded to him, with a dark face. He summoned everyone with this intention. As the governor, if such a big thing happened, he must report it to the royal family. But how to report? What to say? Everyone needs to be on the same page. You can't say something east, and I say something west. You put the responsibility on the deputy governor, and I put the responsibility on the archbishop. Something will happen. In order to unify the caliber, everyone present had a big quarrel, slamming the table, throwing teacups, and foaming at the mouth. You accuse me, I accuse you, you accuse me, I accuse you. After confirming the contents of the report, Governor Balmond discovered that a 5-centimeter thick mahogany table had 3 corners missing, 5 or 6 fingerprints, and a row of small holes dug out by his fingers. Of course, the traces of holy light burning are absolutely indispensable. Then it's settled. Destroying a large conference table was only the slightest price to pay, and Governor Balmond didn't even need to take a second look. This evening, when day and night change, according to the script we have decided, the transmission array will be sent out from the teleportation array in the governor's mansion and the divine magic array in the church. Then, the next question, do we want to explore the situation over there? The conference room instantly went cold. A moment ago, the group of people who had been staring wide-eyed, slapping each other on the table, blushing and thick-necked, all of a sudden went from fighting over each other enthusiastically to turning a deaf ear to the governor's questions. Archbishop Kovo raised his head to the sky, as if he suddenly had enough devotion to the holy light, and began to study the ray of sunlight shining through the window intently. Alonso Barva lowered his head to the ground and traced his fingers back and forth on the table. People who didn't know better thought he was drawing a nautical chart or a route chart. The president of the prosecutor's court, Jose Truck, lowered his head slightly. He seemed to have suddenly become interested in the mahogany table in front of him, and began to study the holes dug out by his fingers on the table. Finally, it was the port tax supervisor, Antonio Morva, who took the initiative to step forward and share the worries of the nobles. As a Brolin born in the Storm Islands, he worked hard to get his current position and did not want to lose it due to any changes. Naturally, if you want to keep your current status, you have to do some things that noble people are unwilling to do, or even pretend that they have never done it. Blessed by the Lord of Glory, there must be many people alive in the team led by His Excellency the Deputy Governor and His Excellency the Archbishop. But because the ship was robbed, they cannot return. I think we should send people, at least send merchant ships, to pick them up. They come back. The atmosphere in the conference room quickly became lively. Governor Balman tilted his head slightly, glanced at him, and said nothing. Just by doing this, Supervisor Morver was greatly encouraged. He touched his woolly curly hair and continued. Of course, these merchant ships can also investigate the news of the Eagle Kingdom. If such a big thing happens, the kingdom and the Holy See will definitely come down to hold them accountable. At that time, we can say to them, we have tried our best. The following results were obtained. You have the most dealings with merchant ships, so I'll leave these matters to you. Governor Balmond interrupted. The supervisor immediately bowed. Yes. However, if you want to get the exact information, it's best to ask an expert to go in and take a look. I can't do this. We'll talk about this later. Let's adjourn the meeting. The door of the conference room opened, and a group of noble people filed away, each going to his own place and using his own brains. Governor Balmond was left alone in the messy conference room, frowning and tangled. How to find out the truth about the Eagle Country? Or, is there any relatively powerful master who is not well versed in the world and can be deceived, who can trick him into making a trip to the Eagle Country? Tupac Amaru runs for his life in the jungle. He is not a warrior from the Eagle Kingdom, and of course, he is not a warrior from any of the city-states surrounding the Eagle Kingdom. In fact, he comes from a place further south in the Eagle Country, far, far away. Climb up the towering ridge and descend into the dense jungle, overlooking the vast ocean and looking up at the snow-capped mountains. From south to north, along the way, the terrain is getting lower and higher, the weather is getting hotter and cooler. And he has also grown from a little warrior who could only knock down bobcats to a powerful warrior who dares to overturn stone crocodiles with his bare hands and can chop down mountain eagles with his sword. In fact, Tupac felt that when he returned to his hometown, he could not even try to fight the giant pythons that were sinking in the pools and wrapped around the tree trunks. However, such strength was shattered more than a month ago. The blazing fire falling from the sky, the exploding thunder, and the endless golden light killed his leader, the father of his beloved girl, the emaciated old soldier with gnarled muscles. The brother who injured the girl, the soldier who hunted a Gulf crocodile during his coming-of-age ceremony and tattooed a crocodile head on his back, the man who smiled brightly, was quickly captured. All the warriors of the entire tribe who followed them into battle would either die or be captured. In desperation, Tupac jumped into a sewage pool and buried himself in it for a day and night with a reed in his mouth. Fortunately, he was not captured. However, he did not dare to go back. What are you going back for? Say to his beloved girl, your father is dead, your brother has been captured, all the men in the tribe are gone, and I am the only one who escaped? To save them. We must save them. Tupac gritted his teeth, smeared his face and body with mud, and quietly followed the team escorting the prisoners. Those weirdos flying around in robes have withdrawn, and it is not easy for those warriors flying with flapping wings to discover his whereabouts. Tupac dodged and evaded, traveling day and night, and actually followed him to the plateau. However, from the prisoners being led into the pyramid, to the living sacrifices in the square, to the large groups of captives being led out of the pyramid, to the valleys far away, Tupac never found his chance. In fact, he didn't even dare to get close to the valley. As he got a little closer, he felt a strange cold feeling, which made his hair stand on end. Tupac continued to lurk. During the day, I hid in caves, bushes, and mud, trying my best to lurk. At night, in addition to stealing things from time to fill my stomach, I just tried to pry. Finally, he heard something that made his whole body go cold. Those people who were taken into the valley will never be released. They will always be kept inside, cut open inch by inch, and chopped up inch by inch. Being bitten by poisonous insects, bitten by poisonous snakes, being fed all kinds of poisons, and being tortured with various spells. To save them. We must save them. If I can't save them by relying on my strength, then I have to find someone stronger than them, the strongest master I can find. Tupac gritted his teeth and made up his mind. He raised his head to identify the stars in the sky, smelled the cool breeze in the mountains, took off his feet, and ran towards his hometown. There, in the hot and humid jungle, under the giant trees that obscured the view of the sky, and by the deep pool where the giant python rested, there was a powerful forest guard wandering. Strong, and friendly. He once learned fighting skills from her, and when the children of the tribe were in danger, whenever she saw them, she would always lend a helping hand in time. Find her. Go find her. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Yamengbing for the 10,000 starting coins. Thanks to @Ziliang Zhongxian for the reward of 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1011. Gretel had no idea how the governor's palace of the Storm Islands would react, what the kingdom of Brolin and the Holy Sea of Glory would think after receiving the news, and what powerful people might come from afar. He didn't even go out to the research institute. The large group of people from the parliament had already left by airship, leaving only one group looking at the Mage Tower in the capital city of Tenok, and another group looking at the Mage Tower at the port. Those low-level mages, merchants, and magic craftsmen who came with the airship, centered on the two wizard towers, purchased materials, made magic products, and sold them to external parties. Some of them are too energetic, and they also go back and forth on the plateau basin, go up and down nearby, and drill around to explore. From time to time, someone comes knocking on the door. Mage Nordmark, could you please tell me what the use of this plant is? Show me a plant, and you dig it up by the roots. What's the use of giving me a dead dried flower? Even if I can talk to plants, do you expect me to talk to half of a dead plant organ? Mage Nordmark, could you please take a look, I was bitten by an insect. Stop. Do not move. Don't get scared and run away when you see me take out the knife. I want to see if bugs have laid eggs in your arms. Body fixing technique. Mage Nordmark, look at this ore. Take it away. I'm not a change type. For ore identification and other matters, let people from their alchemy branch do it. Unless you get some strange disease from being around this ore, for example, this happens to be a piece of pitchblende, if that happens, come back to me. Things like this happened a lot, and Gretel was originally interested in walking around Tenok City and accompanying Cyrilla to see the rare things. Gradually, he didn't even leave the institute and focused solely on research on yellow fever. There's nothing we can do if we don't stay in the research institute. It would take 10 days and a half at the earliest for the airship to return to Nevis. To summon the necromancers of the plague branch in Nevis, even if those necromancers signed up enthusiastically, gathered the jars, gathered the guards, and prepared the travel supplies, it would still take 3 to 5 to 7 to 8 days. Then, it is impossible for these necromancers to receive special treatment from airships, they have to come over by themselves. 1 or 2 months by boat, 1 or 2 months from the east coast of the New World to the west coast, and 1 or 2 months from the west coast to the Land of Eagles. Even if everything goes well, Greet estimates that if they can arrive before the end of the rainy season, it will be considered extremely efficient. Before that, the Institute only had Gretel, Archmage Haynes, a few necromancers brought over by Archmage Haynes, and Lynn, working hard inside. Miss Sarala helps when she is happy to help, and wanders around when she is not happy to help. Although Mr. Balancimo works hard to help, his spellcasting level is limited and he can only be used as a second and third level mage. Bernard. Apart from carrying the soldiers, commanding the native soldiers to guard the prisoners of war, and directing the native slaves to deliver meals to the prisoners of war, Bernard was really of no use. Besides, the most important work of analyzing and judging data still requires Gretel to do it himself. Subject number 1, body temperature is normal. Subject number 2, body temperature is normal. Subject number 13 has a high body temperature. Someone, give him a mercury thermometer and tell him to hold it under his tongue and shut up for 3 minutes. Archmage Hines, why don't you a skeleton? He can talk. You can speak, but you can add spell of glossary to it so that it can speak words that the other party can understand. I'm still researching this, forget it, I'll work harder and throw a proficient speech to the native. Language bar. Lynn put down the record book in his hand and glanced at Gretel silently. Gretel, your demands are too high. I used to think that his golden skeleton was very fragrant. It could do housework, cook, had fighting ability, and could even pick up the skin of Mr. Trochka's neck. I longed to get one. Later, when O'Neill Gold came along, he could help with surgeries and incisions, and the golden skull immediately lost its smell. You didn't even expect O'Neill Gold to help with cooking, sweeping the floor, and washing clothes? Now, you actually dislike the skeleton of an 18th level archmage and can't speak the indigenous language. Skeletons can talk very well, okay. Your Aonijin can only touch his upper teeth against his lower teeth, making a lot of grrrrr sounds. Today's statistical results show that there are 3 groups, 13 people with elevated body temperatures and suspected symptoms of yellow fever. One group is the mosquito group, the other is the blood injection group. Gretel went through today's data one by one, turned on the spell again, and looked at all the patients one by one. In addition to fortune observation technique, the god of nature's divine magic also has similar methods, which are even more detailed than fortune observation technique. You can tell at a glance who is in good health, who is sick, who has just begun to suffer from illness, and who is seriously ill. The important thing is that there is no need to listen to the heartbeat, no need to take the temperature, or even no need to enter the door. Indeed, as he expected, those subjects who lived with yellow fever patients across a railing and put mosquitoes in the railings developed symptoms of yellow fever, ranging from mild to severe. Some of the subjects who lived alone and set up mosquito isolating arrays but were injected with the blood of yellow fever patients developed symptoms, mainly those patients who had just become ill. After the illness was relieved and when they started vomiting blood, the probability of symptoms was different. Big. Those subjects who lived in a room full of vomit from yellow fever patients, but with a magic circle set up to isolate mosquitoes, had been living there for 2 weeks, and everyone was alive and well, and no one had any problems. Those who take personal care of yellow fever patients and have close contact with them, why are there 3 sick people? Gretel scratched his head. Could it be that this crap thing has other ways of spreading besides insect vectors? If droplets can also be transmitted, and it can also be transmitted through the digestive tract, this will be a big trouble. Have a look. Greet frowned and walked to the isolation ward according to the room number on the record book. To drive away mosquitoes and flies, open the door, close the door, and drive away mosquitoes and flies again. Stepping into the first isolation ward, Gretel glanced around and then covered his forehead. I asked you to take care of him, why did you beat him? The indigenous warrior lying on the ground had a bruised nose and swollen face, and blood marks everywhere on his face, arms, and body. Correspondingly, the Brolin soldier who was locked up with him also had his arms scratched one by one. There was even a deep tooth mark on the left shoulder, the flesh was rolled and blood was oozing out. Greet went over and took a look at the indigenous warrior. Yes, there were obvious symptoms of bleeding gums. If he is handcuffed to the wall like this and still has the strength to fight back, should we say that the natives are physically strong, or should we say that the soldier's symptoms are not very severe, or should we say that rabbits can bite when pushed hard? He killed my comrade. 2 of the 3 people in the team died in his hands, Soldier Brolin said with hatred, his face twisted, and when he touched the wound on his face, he couldn't help but hiss. Greet let out a long sigh. Okay, the mystery of this group is solved. If you are scratched by a monkey with yellow fever, you will be infected with yellow fever. If you are bitten by a person with yellow fever, you will also be infected with yellow fever. Change him to another room and don't let them stay together. Greet sighed and went to the second problematic room. This time, he stepped into the ward, turned around and left. Drag that guy out too. It's true, after 3 years on the ship, even the top sheep will have a pretty face. Why do you see Yangdu's beautiful features? Cyrilla, who was following Gretel and was pushed out before she could see the room clearly, asked curiously. Gretel was speechless, stared, and turned around. Sarah, a good girl doesn't need to know this. But I'm not a human girl. Just tell me. Tell me, tell me. This, that, Cyrilla, you have been on the boat for 3 years and have nothing else to eat except fish. When you see the first sheep, will you want to eat it? Alas, doing epidemiological research is really difficult. When I was studying in my previous life, the research methods taught in epidemiology, such as etiological inference, causal logic, design and implementation, bias and control, cohort studies, case control studies, experimental epidemiological studies, screening and diagnostic tests. I have done it once, with smoke on my head and sweat on my back, and then I realize how difficult it is to do research and how great the previous researchers are. Thank God for his level. Fortunately, he did not take the academic route in his previous life, but took the clinical route. In short, after a series of accidents and ruling out a series of unrelated causes, Gretel finally proved the spread of yellow fever. Very good, basically related to blood and transmitted through mosquito bites. Of course, you must be scratched or bitten by the patient during the illness, or do something you shouldn't do and have blood contact, then, you deserve it. Greet breathed out and solemnly wrote his first paper on tropical infectious diseases. At the end of the paper, he also made a comment. Given that there are many types of mosquitoes in the world, perhaps not every mosquito can transmit yellow fever. However, in order to ensure the health and safety of adventurers, we solemnly recommend that all mosquitoes be driven away. Well, figuring out the mode of infection is the first step. Their ultimate goal is to figure out prevention and treatment. So, how to prevent and cure this crap? The simplest way is to carry equipment with mosquito repellent magic with you. Bracelet, or pendant, or headband, or belt, or cloak. This kind of magic equipment does not need to be developed by Gretel, the council already has it. It's just that the uses were not widely used and the sales volume was not high, resulting in high product prices. A cloak or belt, single function, starts at 2,000 gold coins, a headband, bracelet, or pendant, because it is relatively small, starts at 3,000 gold coins. Only magicians who are spoiled and hate mosquitoes would buy this kind of equipment. As for ordinary warriors and ordinary adventurers, with 2,000 to 3,000 gold coins, who would tie their head to the waistband and go out for adventure? Wouldn't it be nice to make some smoke or apply some grass juice to reduce mosquito bites? The problem is that smoke works well in the campsite, but it cannot protect the whole body during outdoor activities. Even if you apply grass juice on your arms, legs, and exposed skin, you won't be able to use the toilet in the wild. Traveling through mountains and rivers, sweating and wading in water, the grass juice will not be washed away. Doing this can only reduce the probability of mosquito bites from 100 bites per day to 10 bites per day. What greed has to do is to reduce the probability from 10 bites a day to not taking one bite at all, or, even if he takes 100 bites, he will not be infected with yellow fever. Happy Chinese Valentine's Day to everyone. The single cat is crying and coding for everyone to see. There will be more to come. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. I finally finished reading the recently released Starting from Changjin Lake. All I can say is, it's a good book, it's a really good book, and it's definitely worth ordering over 10,000 yuan for the first time. I recommend everyone to watch it, you will definitely not regret it. My heart is surging and my intestines are filled with anger. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1012. Sister Jasmine, when you went into the jungle, what method did you use to prevent mosquitoes from biting you? Greed had asked this question as he saw the Hawthorns off before they set off for the port to open a store. Mosquito prevention and vaccines are two different technical routes and cannot replace each other. A vaccine, if successfully developed, can provide 100%, or at least 95%, protection against yellow fever. And it's cheap. According to Greet's estimation, after mass production, the price per person can be less than 1 gold coin, or even less than 1 silver coin. If mosquito repellent is 100% successful, it will not only protect against yellow fever, malaria, Japanese encephalitis, dengue fever, Zika virus, everything can be prevented. This is beyond the reach of vaccines. But it's expensive. Magical expulsion is too expensive, and ordinary expulsion methods are unreliable. Gretel also placed his hope on other races. For example, if the elves have any special methods. Mosquitoes will definitely not bite me. The half-elf landlady who came over with a plate of roasted rabbit tilted her head and smiled, looking cute and cute. She put down the plate and Mr. Hawthorne immediately took over, cutting the rabbit legs one by one and placing them on the guests' plates. And Ms. Jasmine was lying on the back of her husband's chair, looking at her husband's generous back, and smiled slightly. He is a bit more troublesome. We went on a mission together, and the mosquitoes ignored me at all. Instead, they chased after him like a black cloud. He was so frightened that he rushed into my tent, otherwise, how could you hit him with an ice pick? Who knew there would be so many mosquitoes in that place? Mr. Hawthorne finished cutting the 4 rabbit legs and distributed them to Greet, Sirara, Lynn, and Bernard. The legs of the second rabbit were divided between Valensimo, Jasmine, and himself. He lifted the dinner plate and poured the 2 rabbit trunks into Bernard's plate. After handing back the plate and watching Jasmine leave the table briskly to take down a dish, the former mercenary nicknamed Firestone shrugged and looked back at his wife tenderly, his ears a little red. Isn't it generally true that the farther south you go, the hotter the weather, and the more water and swamps there are, the more mosquitoes there are and the more poisonous they are? Who knew that so far north, the mosquitoes are like exploding, like a black cloud? Come to me. He demonstrated to everyone with gestures. Aren't mosquitoes usually buzzing, 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 and you can just hear them buzzing, but you can't see where they are? 1 can buzz for half a day, and 2 can buzz for a whole night. Greet nodded. Mr. Hawthorne's voice suddenly sounded higher, and he finally remembered to tilt his head slightly to prevent his saliva from spraying onto the dinner plate on the table. That's not the place. I saw that the momentum was not going well, so I took off my big brimmed hat and slapped it on my face. Good guy, the sound on the hat was crackling. It was like a hailstorm. With a touch of my hand, it's thick and greasy, like a layer of mud. Greet's head exploded upon hearing this. It's not like he's never traveled to the Blackgate Peninsula or walked through the Great Wilderness, so he's never seen such a spectacular mosquito. However, next to him, Bernard and Baron Simo nodded together. It's like that in some places. It's like this in the north. Some places have no mosquitoes, and some places have a lot of mosquitoes. Not only are they numerous, but they're also big and dense. So that's it, Gretel thought for a moment and shuddered. Fortunately, he didn't encounter such a scene. He asked curiously. Then what? Then I panicked, Mr. Hawthorne sighed. The back of my hand hurts and is a little numb. Forget the pain, numbness is not a good sign. The hat is covering my face, crackling, and I can't see anything. I just try to fan, and I can see through the gaps. If there is no mosquito-free area, just rush over. And that place without mosquitoes is my tent. Mrs. Hawthorne came over carrying a large and deep earthenware pot and placed it in the middle of the long table with a bang. There aren't even pigs or sheep in this place. I'll tell the caravan later to bring some more piglets and lambs. There are also cows. How can we live without steaks? Do you eat crocodile tails every day? Lifting the lid of the pot, it turned out to be a big crocodile tail, together with a few stewed crocodile claws, simmering hot in the pot. Ms. Jasmine took matters into her own hands, filled a bowl for Greet, leaned over and pushed it in front of him. Going back to the previous question, mosquitoes will not bite me, but they will bite him. So in the wild, I will pick some flowers and plants, crush them and apply them on him. Which flowers and plants? There are different flowers and plants in different places. This half-elf, plant master, nature's darling, smiles and takes it for granted. I don't know what their names are. Take a walk and see which plants mosquitoes don't approach, and see which plants animals roll on to avoid mosquitoes. Why don't you just use them? What's so difficult about this? This. Gretel sweated. Sarah on the left and Valensimo on the right both turned their heads silently and squinted at him from the corners of their eyes. It seems like someone is a level 10 nature priest. It seems that someone is also nature's favorite, right? It seems that someone should go for a walk in the forest, chat with flowers, plants, and trees, and then they will naturally know what plants should be used to repel mosquitoes, right? So why do you have to ask others about this kind of thing? After asking, others will point out the route. Why can't you just follow the plan? Cough, cough, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. Gretel lowered his head, filled his mouth with a spoonful of crocodile soup, and then coughed violently. After coughing, his eyes were filled with tears, and he looked at Ms. Jasmine accusingly. Sister Jasmine, what did you add to the soup? A little spice, Ms. Jasmine replied confidently. The taste of crocodile meat is so strong, it won't taste good without adding spices. Greet lowered his head and picked out spice seeds from the soup one by one. Ms. Jasmine sighed, turned around and poured him a glass of ice water. Okay, I know you want to find a cheap way to save adventurers from mosquito problems. Back to the port, we will also send a task to ask them to bring some plants from the jungle and help you identify them one by one, okay? Good. Then I'll put a bounty on the mage tower. Gretel geared up. Senior brother came here this time and repainted my badge. I have another amount of money in my account. No need. Ms. Jasmine smiled and waved. We are already cooperating with the council to identify plants in mosquito-repellent equipment. Don't worry, we also want to get it done early. When the first batch of adventurers arrive, it's best to have something useful so that they can get us money. Get stuff done. It would be best if the council is responsible for repelling mosquitoes. Gretel sent the Hawthorns away and plunged into his work. We need to work hard to repel mosquitoes, and we need to work hard on vaccines. What exactly should the vaccine be made of? Greet passed through the experimental area of the institute, more specifically, the subject holding area, and came to the research area. Different from the test area, the research area strictly follows the standards of the P4 laboratory, with 3 areas, 2 passages, and 1 airtight door. Different from Gretel's previous life and the handmade monkey version of the laboratory when Gretel first arrived in this world, in this P4 laboratory, every wall, every ceiling, and every inch of space above and below the laboratory are shrouded by anti-teleportation magic. If you want to go out, you must take the passage from the contaminated area to the semi-contaminated area to the clean area, and strictly disinfect each one. Not to mention the wizard, not even a mosquito can fly out. Whether it's opening any door, teleporting, or entering and exiting through stone walking, jumping in fire, jumping through lightning, etc., don't even think about it. Well, what happened last time, where someone sneaked into the core area of the laboratory with a shadow leap and caused a huge stir, will never happen again. Gretel took a shower, changed clothes, put on protective clothing, applied a bubble technique on herself to maintain fresh air, and applied a cold and heat-resistant technique on herself to prevent sweating. Emma, without magic, I really can't stand it in this outfit. He took a deep breath, pulled on the protective suit and sealed it, and quickly stepped inside. Squatting down in front of the experimental table, facing a refrigerator with a test tube blessed with blood preservation spells, he held his chin in one hand and frowned. First of all, how to isolate the virus? You can't directly inject human blood into animals. In which part of the blood is the virus? Blood cells? Serum? The answer to this question is actually very simple. The centrifuge spins quickly to separate the blood cells and serum of yellow fever patients. The blood cells are injected into a healthy person, and the serum is injected into another healthy person to see who will be infected. Helplessly, Gretel did not expect this when he verified the infection method previously. Now we have to go back and capture 2 more healthy people to verify. Greet touched his own moral integrity, a little reluctant to let it break to such an extent. No choice, take the long way. Uniakim, he shouted. Start the centrifuge at 3000 RPM for 3 minutes to separate blood cells and serum. Dilute them 10 times with normal saline. Onegin went to work clicking away. Gretel looked at them with envy. I don't have to wear a protective suit, I don't have to endure the dirty air, I don't have to sweat profusely in protective clothing, I'm so happy. Skeleton number 1. Take 20 mice and inject 0.5 ml of blood cell diluent intraperitoneally into each mouse. Skeleton number 2. Take 20 mice and subcutaneously inject each with 0.5 ml of blood cell dilution solution. Skeleton number 3. Intraperitoneal injection of serum diluent. Skeleton number 4, subcutaneous injection of serum diluent. Skeleton number 5. Get 20 rabbits. Complete all injection experiments in one go, and move the experimental animals to a special area to wait for dedicated supervision. Gretel waved his hand. Okay. The experiment is over, Onegin, take everyone out. The skeletons collectively turned back, lined up, and left the contaminated area. Greet was busy by himself for a while, then went out to take a breather, rinse, and take off his protective clothing. Emerging from the wet rubber protective suit, he turned his head and saw the boss in the corner next to the door. He had a bucket of disinfectant water, the water surface was rippling, and there were a dozen skulls piled under the water. Onegin, Gretel had a headache and held his forehead. If there are not enough buckets, just tell me and I will make new ones. You don't need to take apart the bones, all the skeletons are piled in one bucket. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1013. While Greet was immersed in the experiment, Archmage Heinz was in another experimental area, working with students of students, 2 young necromancers temporarily captured, and 2 other mages who were willing to work in the institute. There were dozens of caged monkeys looking at each other. Why do we have monkeys? Yes, why do we raise monkeys? Isn't this a matter for nature priests? Why do we necromancers do it? That's right, and there are so many monkeys in the jungle. When you need it, can't you just catch a group of them? Why do you need us to raise them? Archmage Heinz also criticized this a lot. However, when the students were confused and complained, he still had to cough and try to calm down the situation. Stop talking. He glanced around majestically. Seeing everyone shut up and bow their heads, he coughed with satisfaction and scolded. Don't want to raise monkeys? If you don't want to raise monkeys, go next door. You can raise rabbits, dogs, chickens, mice, you can do it all. You don't have to raise monkeys here. A very, very quiet wailing. In addition to the monkey area, there are indeed several sections in the animal area, but who is raising them? They are all indigenous. All Aboriginal women and Aboriginal children. Cutting grass for rabbits, feeding corn to chickens, feeding corn to dogs with pumpkin and occasionally some meat, this is what they are used to doing every day. Raising rats is rare, but rats will eat anything. How could they, the noble mages, do the same work as those indigenous women and children? Besides, raising monkeys is also for experiments. Many spells have similar effects on monkeys as on humans, which is different from dogs and pigs. So, try to raise monkeys. It's rare. There are so many here. Well, anyway, this research institute has been reserved as the property of Black Crow Swamp. Raise more monkeys and use them for other research in the future, such as drug experiments or magic experiments, or studying other plagues. Most of the magicians bowed their heads to show their obedience, and one after another, they dispersed to work. The only disciple of Archmage Heinz, the 15th level Archmage Wendell Jennings, who was brought here to take up a quota, relied on his teacher's favor and muttered in a low voice. Even if this is the case, just capture it. Why raise it? Because Gretel said that clean monkeys are needed. Archmage Heinz sighed. These monkeys are all caught in the jungle. No one knows how many kinds of bacteria they carry. When the time comes, you inject an injection and the monkey has a fever. Is it the poisonous blood you injected that caused it to have a fever? Or is it dirty on its own? In fact, Greet said more than that. When Archmage Heinz went to have a meeting with him, he saw Gretel lying on the table, writing and drawing, and muttering sadly. The monkeys on the edge of the eternal river, the crab-eating monkeys, none of these, God knows what kind of monkeys in the nearby jungle, and there are no specific pathogens, even if not, at least give me clean level monkeys. Where is the eternal river? Archmage Heinz suddenly asked. Do you want monkeys that eat crabs? I'll ask them to set up a mission in the Mage Tower and let the natives look for them. If they find monkeys that eat crabs, they will be caught by you. Or feed them crabs directly and see which kind of monkeys they eat. Gretel turned her head and gave him a I'm about to cry expression. What I want is a rhesus monkey and a cynomolgus monkey, not just any monkey. It doesn't mean that if there are no rhesus monkeys for experiments, you can go to Mount Ime to catch a nest. Those rhesus monkeys are not worthy. Even if you don't consider that it is a Tibetan emirate, not a rhesus monkey, don't consider that the Tibetan emirate is also a national second-level protected animal. Monkeys growing in the wild have countless germs and viruses. It doesn't mean that if you shave their hair and wash them with disinfectant, they will become clean monkeys. It's not there outside the body, but it's still there inside the body. The cheapest ordinary level monkeys are also required to not carry zoonotic pathogens, and not to carry severe animal infectious disease pathogens. Going up one level, clean level monkeys, in addition to the pathogens that ordinary level cannot carry, can also not carry pathogens that are harmful to animals and interfere with research. And what he wants is a monkey without yellow fever virus, malaria virus, dengue virus, Zika virus, and all kinds of strange viruses. He has to go up one level to reach the specific pathogen-free level, SPF. Class: SPF grade, sterile, GF, grade, and animals suffering from specific diseases, knocking out specific genes, etc., are higher each level. As for the price, it's not a doubling increase, it's a geometric increase. A rhesus monkey sells for 100,000, do you think it's a joke? However, even if it is expensive, you could still buy it in the past. In the past, you only needed to write an experimental design, fill in a report, apply for a budget, and then buy. It is not like this broken world, where there is no ready-made product at all, and you have to start from scratch. In his Oak Forest Research Institute, the necromancers worked diligently for several years, wearing protective clothing in and out of the animal room every day, and finally raised a group of clean mice. As for the monkey? Sorry, he is poor and cannot afford to raise a monkey. Anyway, let's talk about feeding these monkeys. After feeding them, they will give birth to cubs. The cubs will be raised in a clean environment for several generations, probably, they can be used. Archmage Haynes recalled the operation manual given by Gretel, about cleaning the animal room, entry and exit requirements, operating standards, etc., and continued to order his subordinates. Don't be in a daze. Clean these monkeys first. Clean them all. There's such a big bucket of disinfectant water over there. Ah! This monkey refuses to go into the water, a young necromancer screamed. He quickly raised his hands to cover his face, and with a clang, the mage armor on his body burst into flames. Still tickling me? Petrification. Before Archmage Haynes could respond to that guy, his disciple's disciple, the little leader of this group, reprimanded. Charm. There are so many ready-made spells, don't you know how to use one? Don't do it yourself. Where is your skeleton? Why don't you use the skeleton to work? I'm not a magician, I have the petrification technique. How can I shave them if I have the petrification technique? The chicken is flying and the dog is jumping, the chicken is flying and the dog is jumping. Finally, all the monkeys were forced to be washed, shaved, nails cut, and even brushed. After a round of cleaning work, every low-level mage collapsed outside the iron cage, looking at each other with the monkey collapsed in the iron cage. No one wanted to move. I said, it seems like there's something you haven't done. What else can there be? I'm hungry, let's go eat first. By the way, we have to feed the monkey first. Bang 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 bang, large buckets of corn, pumpkins, fruits, and chopped chicken were carried into the animal room by the skeletons in groups of 2. They picked up spoons and gave each monkey a spoonful in his food bowl. The necromancers breathed a sigh of relief and went out to eat. The tortillas are still a little burnt. Pumpkin gooey. Cactus fruit. Avocado. Grilled chicken meatballs. Cornmeal pancakes, wrapped with pumpkin, peas, and chicken strips. Chili sauce is on the side, whoever wants to apply as much as he wants. Do you think we eat the same thing as monkeys? At most, we eat cooked food and they eat raw food. No, monkeys can still eat spicy food, but we can't. A necromancer who was not used to spicy food took a bite of the chicken meatballs and was so spicy by the hot pepper fragments inside that he burst into tears. Forcing people to eat spicy food is simply heresy. Who is cooking in the kitchen? I really want to whip the cook. Calm down, no one cooks here, it's all Taling who helps with his invisible servants. What you should ask is, who taught Taling how to make these local dishes? The young mages, who were not qualified to decide the menu or even order the dishes, looked at each other in confusion. Although there is no mage tower built in the institute, it is just that there is no tower-shaped building built. The entire research institute is still under the control of Taling. The current control authority of the tower spirit is, sorry, in the hands of Archmage Heinz. Even if his tongue is so dull that it's close to death, and he wants to eat something with strong taste, he still has to leave us some edible dishes. T. The offended necromancer continued to complain tearfully. With a snap, he received a slap on the back of his head, and the team leader waved away the mage's hand expressionlessly. Stop complaining. Eat quickly and then go see those monkeys. I feel like these monkeys are going to cause us countless troubles. Trouble indeed. The necromancers hurriedly finished their lunch, and when they returned to the animal room, they all frowned. Ah, why don't these monkeys eat them? If Gretel were here, he would tell them, the monkey is stressed. Not to mention animals, even humans, if they are caught inexplicably, their whole body is frozen for no apparent reason, they are immersed in water with a strange smell, and their hair is shaved, they will lower their heads to the dark wall and tremble for 3 to 5 days. It was still good not to eat, at least he didn't scream, slam into the cage wall, scratch himself all over, or vomit blood and die inexplicably. The way the necromancers deal with it is also very simple and crude. Not eating, right? Hunger spell. I'll make you feel hungry, crazy with hunger, and see if you eat or not. What, not eating yet? Dominate the animals. Ho, it's really hard to raise a monkey, we have to control what we eat, and we have to control if we don't poop in the future. Can you apply for a nature priest to do this job, raising animals? They are obviously good at it, why should we throw it at the necromancer? SHH. That 10th level nature priest, so and so, if he had been willing to raise animals, he would have stopped arresting others. The problem is, he is stuck in the core of the institute and refuses to come out. By the way, who knows the soothing technique? Give the monkeys a soothing technique. There are many stumbling blocks and countless difficulties. All in all, the animal breeding team headed by necromancers finally succeeded in keeping the monkeys alive, and then they faced the next difficulty. These monkeys, why don't they have babies? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of thanks to at reading books. 100 starting coins as a reward for breaking 10,000 volumes.